Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. The hardware store smelled like sawdust and machine oil, familiar scents that usually brought Rod Boyer comfort. He ran his calloused hand along a sheet of plywood, checking for warping, while his phone buzzed in his pocket. He almost ignored it. Clients could wait, but something made him check the screen. Jay, his 17-year-old son, never called during basketball practice. "Hey, bud, what's—" The scream that came through the phone turned Rod's blood to ice. Not his son's voice. Multiple voices, laughing. Then Jay, terrified, "Dad, Dad, Coach's friends locked me in the locker room. There's 8 of them. They're filming everything. They won't let me." The phone was wrenched away. Heavy breathing, then a smooth, condescending voice Rod recognized. Coach Clint Fleming. "Your boys are content now, construction worker. Save your breath calling cops or lawyers. You can't afford either." The line went dead. Rod stood perfectly still for 3 seconds. Around him, Saturday shoppers browsed paint samples and compared drill bits. Normal people living normal lives. His hand was steady as he pulled out his second phone, the one with an encrypted line that hadn't rung in 4 years. "Miles," a gruff voice answered on the first ring. "It's Boyer. I need the unit. Now." A pause. "Jesus, Rod. It's been my son, some piece of shit coach, and 8 others. They're filming him. I'm texting you the address." Rod's voice was calm, surgical. 19 years in the FBI's Organized Crime Division had taught him that panic was useless. Precision was everything. "Give me 2 hours. We'll ghost the place." Rod left his card in the aisle and walked out. He wasn't a construction worker. He'd spent 2 decades building something much more complex than houses. He built covers. Identities. False lives so convincing that mobsters, cartel members, and human traffickers never saw him coming until his team had everything they needed to bury them. And Clint Fleming had just made the worst mistake of his life by assuming Rod Boyer was just another blue-collar nobody. The drive to Lakewood High took 12 minutes. Rod knew better than to storm in. That's what amateurs did, what desperate fathers did. He parked 3 blocks away and called the school's main office, disguising his voice with a perfect approximation of an elderly administrator's warble. "Yes, this is Principal Hendrick's assistant calling about the gymnasium reservation for this evening. I need to confirm Coach Fleming approved the— Oh, practice is still ongoing? Wonderful. Just wanted to verify." He hung up. They were still there. Good. That meant they felt safe, untouchable. Rod had seen that arrogance before. Predators always believed they were too smart to get caught. His phone buzzed. Randy Miles, Henson, and Christian en route. "We're mobilizing full surveillance package. Boyer, don't do anything stupid before we arrive." Rod typed back, "Define stupid." While he waited, he pulled up everything digital on Clint Fleming. 42 years old. Hired at Lakewood 3 years ago after a previous coaching position in Nevada ended abruptly. No criminal record, but Rod knew how to read between lines. The Nevada school's online archive showed Fleming's departure coincided with a restructuring of athletic programs. Administrative speak for, "We couldn't prove it, but get the hell out." Fleming's social media was a masterclass in manipulation. Photos with students, inspirational quotes about mentorship, fundraiser announcements. The comments were worshipful, especially from parents who saw him as a miracle worker for their uncoordinated sons. Rod's jaw tightened. Jay had been so proud when Fleming personally recruited him for varsity, despite being a junior. "Dad, Coach Fleming said I have real potential," Jay had said 6 months ago, eyes shining. "He wants to do extra training sessions." Rod had felt uneasy even then, but dismissed it as overprotective paranoia. He'd spent so long seeing monsters everywhere that sometimes he manufactured them. Except this time, the monster was real, and Rod had been too busy building fences and installing drywall in his new civilian life to notice. A black SUV pulled alongside his truck. Randy Miles stepped out, looking exactly as Rod remembered, compact, muscular, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind him, Abel Henson unfolded his lanky frame from the passenger's seat, already setting up a laptop on the hood. Frederick Christian emerged from a second vehicle, carrying equipment bags. 4 years pretending to be a contractor, Miles said, gripping Rod's shoulder. I always knew you'd suck at retirement. My son, we know. Henson's already pulling security footage, phone records, everything. Christian's setting up thermal imaging on the building. We'll have eyes inside in 10 minutes. Miles' expression hardened. But Rod, we need to do this right. If we go in hot, any evidence gets compromised. These bastards walk. Rod nodded. His instinct screamed to kick down doors, but his training held firm. What do you need from me? Background. Everything. How'd this start? Rod leaned against his truck, forcing himself to think like an investigator, not father. Jay made varsity basketball 6 months ago. Fleming started calling him a project, wanted extra practice time. One-on-one sessions, sometimes with a few other boys Fleming said showed promise. Jay was excited, thought it meant he'd get more playing time. Other boys, Henson called out, not looking up from his laptop. We need names. Jay mentioned a sophomore, Isaac Reynolds. Kid from the north side, single mom. Fleming apparently told him the extra coaching was charity work. Christian adjusted a directional antenna aimed at the gymnasium. Thermals showing 9 bodies in the locker room, stationary. 2 more in the adjoining office. That tracked with your count. 8 plus the coach, and... He glanced at Rod. One smaller signature. Has to be Jay. Rod's hands curled into fists. Can you tell if... He's moving. Pacing looks like he's not restrained. Christian's voice softened. Rod, your boys holding together. Because Jay was Rod's son, and Rod had spent 17 years teaching him how to survive. Not just basketball and homework help, real survival. How to assess threats, control breathing during panic, catalog details that could be used later. Rod had told himself it was just responsible parenting, preparing a kid for a dangerous world. He'd never imagined Jay would need those lessons this soon. Got something, Henson announced. Fleming's phone just pinged off a cell tower. He's texting someone. Multiple someones. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Group chat called content creators. Jesus Christ. There's over 30 people in this thread. Miles moved behind Henson, reading the screen over his shoulder. His face went pale, then red. Rod, don't look at this yet. Let us. Show me. Henson angled the laptop. The messages made Rod's vision narrow to a pinpoint. Clint Fleming had been operating a sophisticated network for at least 2 years, creating and distributing illegal content featuring teenage boys. The 8 men with him weren't random friends. They were collaborators, each with specific roles. Production, distribution, recruitment. And they've been targeting vulnerable kids. Single-parent households, low-income families, boys desperate for male attention and athletic validation. How many victims? Rod's voice was barely a whisper. We're seeing references to at least 20 screen names. Could be more. Henson's expression was murderous. Fleming's the ringleader. The others are regulars. They got a whole system, recruiting through youth sports programs across 3 counties, using private coaching as cover. Miles was already on his phone. I'm calling this into the bureau. We need... No. Rod's tone stopped him cold. Not yet. Rod, you call in now, what happens? Local field office sends agents who don't know the players. Fleming's smart. He'll have escape plans, evidence destruction protocols. By the time warrants are issued, how many of these bastards vanish? Christian lowered his antenna. He's right. This kind of network, they'll have dead man switches contingencies. We spook them now. We might save Jay but lose everyone else. Miles studied Rod carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Rod said quietly, that I spent 19 years infiltrating organizations exactly like this. I know how they operate, how they think. And I'm thinking that my son is in that building right now, probably terrified, while 9 predators feel completely safe. Boyer, if you're suggesting what I think. 36 hours. Rod met Miles' eyes. Give me 36 hours to get inside their network, map every connection, identify every victim, and locate every piece of evidence they've created. And we don't just get these 9. We get them all. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Miles nodded. 36 hours. But we do this my way, no cowboy shit. Christian and Henson run support. I'm your handler. And Rod, His voice dropped. When this is over, if you've compromised the case because you went off book, I'll arrest you myself. Understood. First priority is getting Jay out safely, Christian said. They think you're some helpless contractor. Use that. Rod pulled out his regular phone and dialed the main school office. When the secretary answered, he let his voice shake. Not an act, just permission to show the fear he'd been suppressing. This is Jay Boyer's father. I got a disturbing call from my son. He said he's locked in the boys' locker room. Some kind of prank, maybe? I'm worried. The secretary sounded confused. Oh my, let me send someone to check. Can you hold? I'll just come down there. I'm only a few minutes away. He hung up before she could respond. Miles raised an eyebrow. That's the play. They want me to feel powerless. So I show up playing the confused, worried dad. When they release Jay with some bullshit excuse about horseplay gone wrong, I act relieved and grateful. Thank Coach Fleming for sorting it out. Maybe even apologize for overreacting. Rod's smile was cold. Predators get comfortable when their prey acts predictable. And while they're comfortable, Benson asked, I get invited to the barbecue. Rod drove to the school's main entrance and parked visibly, making sure security cameras caught him. He walked inside with slumped shoulders, wearing the mask of every worried parent who'd ever navigated school bureaucracy. The secretary, a plump woman named Merle Taylor according to her nameplate, greeted him with professional concern. Mr. Boyer, I sent Coach Fleming a message. He's bringing Jay up now. Apparently, there was some confusion. The gymnasium door swung open. Clint Fleming appeared, arm around Jay's shoulders, both of them smiling. Anyone watching would see a caring coach and a sheepish teenager. Rod cataloged everything in a glance. Jay's forced smile, the tension in his jaw, the way his left hand gripped his gym bag too tightly. And Fleming's performance. Perfectly calibrated concern mixed with gentle authority. Mr. Boyer, Fleming extended his free hand, his grip firm and warm. Sorry for the scare. Boys were roughhousing after practice. Accidentally knocked a mop handle through the door mechanism. Jay couldn't get out, and I think the situation felt worse than it was. You know how kids panic. Jay's eyes met Rod's. 1,000 messages passed between them. Rod knew his son had registered everything. Faces, voices, the layout of where they'd held him, anything he might need later. Rod let his shoulders sag with relief, shaking Fleming's hand perhaps a moment too long. Oh, thank God. Jay, you okay, bud? Yeah, Dad. I'm fine. It was just the door jammed and I freaked out. The words were scripted, obviously fed to him. Coach Fleming fixed it right away. Some of the senior players stuck around to help. Fleming added smoothly. Good kids, just playing around too rough. I already talked to them about being more careful. Rod nodded eagerly, playing his part. I appreciate you handling it, Coach. I probably overreacted. Long week at work, you know how it is. Completely understand. Hey, we're having a team parents barbecue next Saturday at my place. You should come. Bring Mrs. Boyer if you'd like. Good chance to meet the other dads. See what we're building with these young men. Fleming's smile was perfect, not a hint of the monster beneath. That sounds great, actually. Can I get your number? I'll text you to confirm. They exchanged numbers. Fleming clapped Rod on the shoulder. Good man. Jay's got real talent. I'm glad we're working together to help him reach his potential. In the truck, Jay waited until they were 2 miles from school before he started shaking. Rod pulled into an empty parking lot and his son collapsed against him. 17 years old and suddenly small again. Dad, I tried to. They said if I fought they'd hurt you. They had my whole schedule. Yours, they knew where we lived. Hey, look at me. Rod gripped Jay's shoulders gently. You did everything right. You survived. You didn't give them anything to use against you. And most importantly, you called me. What are we going to do? Rod thought about the team already surveilling Fleming's network, about the 36 hours he had to dismantle everything these predators had built. We're going to make them pay, he said quietly. All of them. But I need you to do something very hard. Jay straightened, wiping his eyes. What? Go back to school Monday. Act normal. Go to practice. Be the scared kid who's too intimidated to tell anyone what really happened. Dad, because right now, they think you won't talk. They think you're isolated and ashamed. That makes them sloppy. Rod met his son's eyes. Can you do that? Can you be the best actor of your life for a few days? Jay took a shuddering breath. Then he nodded. What about the barbecue? I'm going. In fact, I'm going to make Fleming think I'm his new best friend. That evening, after making sure Jay was settled at home under the watchful eye of Rod's sister Lynette Leach, who'd driven in from 2 counties over within an hour of Rod's call, he met the team at a rented office space they'd equipped with enough surveillance equipment to run a field operation. Henson had been busy. A massive monitor displayed a web of connections centered on Clint Fleming. This is bigger than we thought. The 8 men with Fleming today are core members, but the network extends to at least 40 individuals across 4 states. They're not just producing content, they're selling it, trading it, using it to blackmail victims into recruiting others. Christian pointed to specific nodes. These 5 are former coaches Fleming worked with in Nevada. 2 are youth ministers from a church in Oregon. 3 run a sports equipment company that sponsors teams. That's how they identify targets. Parents fill out forms listing family details, financial situations, home environments. They're weaponizing poverty and broken homes, Miles said grimly. Every kid they target comes from a vulnerable background. Single parents, economic stress, kids looking for father figures. Rod studied the web, his operational brain clicking through possibilities. How are they communicating? Encrypted app called Secure Chat. We can intercept messages, but can't decrypt them yet. However, Henson grinned. Fleming's operational security is good, not great. He backs up his phones to a personal cloud account. Password protection is solid, but he uses the same recovery email from multiple services. Give me 6 hours, I'll have access. Meanwhile, Christian added, I traced the 8 from today. He pulled up photos and dossiers. Herman Green, 45, owns a video production company, handles all their filming and editing. Douglas Luna, 38, IT consultant, manages their digital infrastructure. Casey Fitzpatrick, 51, attorney, yes, an actual goddamn lawyer, who provides legal advice on avoiding detection. The other 5 are regulars who participate for access to content. Rod memorized each face. Fitzpatrick's the key. Lawyers keep records. They can't help themselves. Already on it, Henson confirmed. He's got an office in downtown Lakewood. Security's decent, but not bureau-proof. Miles pulled up a tactical map. Here's what I'm thinking for the next 36 hours. Rod, you work the social angle, become Fleming's friend, get invited into the circle. Henson and Christian run electronic surveillance, crack their communications, build the evidence package. I coordinate with my people at the bureau, prepare the takedown team for when we're ready to move. What about the victims? Rod asked. We identify them, alert families? Not yet. Too risky. We spook one family who goes to local cops. The whole network vanishes. Miles' expression was pained. I hate it, but we have to keep them in the dark until we're ready to grab everyone simultaneously. Rod nodded, hating it too, but understanding the logic. Then let's make this count. Over the next 18 hours, Rod became the contractor Clint Fleming thought he was. Earnest, a little dim, grateful for the coach's attention to his son. He texted Fleming about the barbecue, asked advice on Jay's training routine, even sent a friend request on social media that Fleming accepted within minutes. Each interaction was calculated. Rod knew from 19 years of undercover work that infiltration was about making the target feel superior, validated, safe. He praised Fleming's coaching philosophy, mentioned his own absent father, hinted at financial struggles. Everything designed to make Fleming see him as controllable. By Sunday afternoon, Fleming had invited Rod to come to the barbecue early. Always good to have another dad around who gets it, you know? These boys need strong male role models. The words nearly made Rod put his fist through a wall. Instead, he texted back enthusiastic agreement. Henson called at 8 p.m. Got into Fleming's cloud. Rod, you need to see this. The office monitor displayed folder after folder of horrors. Hundreds of videos, thousands of images, meticulously organized by victim, date, location. Detailed notes on recruitment strategies, which boys responded to which approaches, which families could be manipulated most easily. And financial records. Fleming's operation wasn't just about the content. It was a business. Subscription services, private sales, custom requests. The network had generated over $2 million in the past 18 months. There's more, Henson said quietly. He pulled up a document titled Expansion Plan. Fleming intended to franchise his model to youth programs across the country, using his coaching credentials and references to infiltrate schools and sports leagues systematically. Rod forced himself to look at every detail, burning it into memory. Among the victims, he found Isaac Reynolds, the sophomore Jay had mentioned. 16 years old, recruited 4 months ago with promises of a basketball scholarship. The notes detailed how Fleming had isolated him from his mother, convinced him that the special training was normal, that college scouts demanded this kind of documentation. There were 23 other names. 23 boys whose lives Fleming and his network had destroyed for profit and power. We have everything we need for prosecution, Miles said. Multiple counts per perpetrator, production, distribution, conspiracy, crossing state lines. Every single one of them dies in prison. Not enough, Rod said. Miles stared at him. What? Prison's not enough. These bastards operated in plain sight for years. How many people missed the signs? How many institutions failed to protect these kids? Rod's voice was steady, cold. I want them destroyed completely. Reputations, finances, relationships, everything. I want the world to know exactly what they are. Rod, we can't. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for 36 hours like you promised. When I hand them to you, you'll have airtight evidence, full confessions, and a gift-wrapped network to dismantle. What happens before that is my business. Christian and Henson exchanged glances. Finally, Christian spoke. We didn't hear that. But hypothetically, if someone were planning something extra-legal, we'd want to make sure it didn't contaminate the prosecution. Hypothetically, Rod said, I spent 19 years making sure cases went to trial clean. I know how to separate operational justice from legal justice. Miles studied him for a long moment. 24 hours, Rod. Not 36. After that, I'm calling this in with or without you. Deal. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and the smell of cut grass. Rod drove to Fleming's address, a sprawling ranch house in an upscale neighborhood, the kind of place that screamed respectable success. Several cars were already parked out front. Fleming greeted him at the door wearing a Team Dad apron, all smiles and barbecue tongs. Rod, come on in, man. We're just getting started. The backyard was a perfect suburban tableau. Expensive grill, pool with a water slide, basketball hoop. 8 men clustered around a cooler, drinks in hand. Rod recognized every face from Christian's dossiers. Guys, this is Rod Boyer, Jay's dad. Rod, this is the crew. Herman Green, the video production owner, shook Rod's hand with professional warmth. Fleming says your boys got potential. Always good to see dads who support their kids' development. Douglas Luna, the IT consultant, barely looked up from his phone. Yeah, welcome. The lawyer, Casey Fitzpatrick, assessed Rod with sharp eyes. This one wouldn't be easily fooled. Rod met his gaze with the right mixture of deference and working-class suspicion of attorneys. Rod hears in construction, Fleming explained. Real hands-on guy, builds things the right way. Not like Luna here with his head in the cloud. Laughter. The others introduced themselves. Edmund Black, Frederick Christian, Carol Cross, Raphael Kramer, and Jose Massey. Regular guys. If you didn't know, they'd spent yesterday terrorizing a 17-year-old boy. Rod played his role perfectly. Drank beer, talked about permit regulations and lumber prices, laughed at their jokes. Let them feel superior. The successful coach, the business owners, the lawyer, all orbiting their profitable little secret, while the dumb contractor stood among them, grateful for inclusion. 2 hours in, after enough alcohol had flowed to lower guards, Fleming pulled Rod aside. Listen, I know Jay had a rough moment last week. Kids get scared. You know how it is. Yeah, he's fine now. Feels bad about freaking out. Good. Thing is, we run a pretty exclusive program here. Extra attention for boys who show real potential. But it requires trust. Between us dads, between the kids and their coaches. Fleming's tone shifted subtly. You seem like a guy who gets that trust goes both ways. Rod knew exactly where this was going. The recruitment pitch, testing whether he'd be complicit, whether he could be controlled. He made his face earnest, a little uncertain. I want what's best for Jay. He's a good kid, deserves opportunities. Absolutely. And we provide those. But sometimes, look, the world doesn't understand what we're building. People are quick to judge, misinterpret things. We need dads who can keep their mouths shut, who understand that what happens in the program stays in the program. You mean like that locked door thing? Fleming's smile didn't waver. Exactly like that. Sometimes training gets intense. Boys need to be pushed, challenged, taken outside their comfort zones. Weak parents freak out, call lawyers, ruin opportunities over nothing. Strong parents trust the process. Rod lets silence hang for just the right amount of time. Then, Jay needs this. We need this. I won't be the kind of dad who gets in the way. Fleming's smile widened. He clapped Rod on the shoulder. I knew you were smart. Come on, let me introduce you to some people who can really help Jay's future. What followed was the most disturbing 3 hours of Rod's life. Sitting among predators while they discussed their operation in euphemisms and code words, treating the exploitation of children like a business venture. Fleming explained the mentorship program, how select boys receive specialized coaching that was documented for progress tracking. How parents who understood the bigger picture were rewarded with scholarship connections and sports networking opportunities. All of it designed to normalize the abuse, make parents complicit, isolate victims further. Rod smiled and nodded and asked interested questions while his blood turned to ice. He learned that the barbecue was actually a recruiting event. Several other fathers were there, in various stages of being brought into the network. The men traded stories about which boys were responding well to intensive training, which families needed more convincing about the program's value. Casey Fitzpatrick, the lawyer, explained how they protected themselves legally. Documentation is key. We get parents to sign liability waivers, consent forms for video analysis of athletic performance. We build paper trails showing everything's above board. Any kid complains, any parent makes noise, we bury them in legal language and their own signatures. By 6 p.m., Rod had enough information to destroy them 10 times over. He'd also planted seeds. Mentioned he had a friend who did electrical work and might donate time to wire the gym for better recording angles. Suggested his sister who worked in youth services could help identify promising athletes from at-risk backgrounds. Fleming loved it all. See, this is the kind of forward thinking we need. Rod, I think you're going to fit in great here. As the barbecue wound down, Rod made his excuses about an early work site tomorrow and headed for his truck. His hands were steady on the wheel, but his mind was already 3 moves ahead. He didn't drive home. He drove to the rented office where Miles, Henson, and Christian waited. Tell me you were recording, Rod said as he walked in. Henson held up his phone. Every word. You were wearing the pin camera Christian gave you, right? Rod touched the small American flag pin on his shirt. A camera so sophisticated it could capture faces in 4K while looking like patriotic decoration. Got video and audio of all 8, plus Fleming. Clear admissions of their operation, recruitment strategies, even discussion of specific victims. Jesus, Miles breathed. This is prosecutorial gold. We could move tonight. Not yet. Rod moved to the monitor displaying Fleming's network map. We have these 9, but what about the other 30? They'll scatter the moment arrests start. We need everyone simultaneously. Christian pulled up a tactical map. Fitzpatrick's office. I've been surveilling it since yesterday. He keeps physical files. Old school legal paranoia about digital trails. If we can access those files tonight, we'll have documentation on the entire network. Breaking and entering, Miles said flatly. That's a line, Rod. It's a line you don't cross. I will. Rod met his old partner's eyes. You're not here. You don't know about this. Tomorrow morning, you get an anonymous tip about files left on your doorstep. You investigate, discover they're connected to an ongoing child exploitation network. You request warrants, coordinate a multi-state takedown. Everything legal and clean. And if you get caught, I won't. Henson and Christian were already packing equipment. Rod noticed they weren't arguing, weren't trying to stop him. 19 years as a team had built a certain understanding about when to follow regulations and when to follow justice. One condition, Miles said. You take me with you. If this goes sideways, I'm not letting you burn alone. They hit Fitzpatrick's office at 2 a.m. The building was downtown Lakewood, a converted historic structure with modern security that Henson defeated in 4 minutes. The lawyer's second-floor office had better protection, biometric lock, motion sensors, surveillance cameras. Christian disabled the cameras remotely while Henson looped the motion sensor feed. That left the biometric lock, which would have been impossible except for one thing. Fitzpatrick had used his office bathroom earlier that evening during a client meeting, and Henson had retrieved his drinking glass from the trash outside. Fingerprint scanners are surprisingly easy to fool, Henson murmured, pressing a lifted print against the sensor. The lock clicked open. Inside Fitzpatrick's office was organized chaos, filing cabinets, bankers' boxes, a wall of law books. Rod moved systematically, photographing everything with a high-resolution camera while Miles and Henson bagged documents. They found the jackpot in a locked credenza disguised as furniture. Fitzpatrick had kept meticulous records, contracts between network members, financial statements showing profit distribution, even correspondence with international buyers. Names, dates, bank accounts, everything needed to dismantle the entire operation. This bastard kept evidence of his own crimes, Christian whispered. Why? Insurance, Rod said. He thought if anyone moved against him, he'd take everyone down with him. Classic mutual assured destruction. They were loading the last boxes when Miles' phone buzzed. He checked it and swore. Building security's doing a surprise patrol. 3 minutes out. They had 90 seconds to sanitize the scene and disappear. Rod and Christian grabbed the boxes while Henson reset the security systems and Miles wiped down surfaces. They were out the window and rappelling down the exterior wall when flashlights appeared in the second-floor hallway. In the alley, loading their haul into a nondescript van, Rod allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had everything now. Financial records, victim documentation, network membership, communications logs, video evidence. Enough to put every single member of Fleming's organization away for life. But he wasn't done yet. Sunday morning, Rod sat in church next to Jay and Lynette, the First Baptist of Lakewood, where 2 of Fleming's network members served as youth ministers. The same church where they'd recruited 3 victims under the guise of religious mentorship. Reverend Herbert Parks gave a sermon about protecting the innocent, about sacred trust between communities and their children. Rod watched the 2 youth ministers, Edmund Black and Carol Cross, nodding solemnly, playing their roles perfectly. After the service, Rod approached them with Jay at his side. Excuse me, I'm new to the area. Coach Fleming mentioned you guys do great youth outreach. Edmund Black's smile was practiced, warm. Absolutely. We're always looking for young men who want to grow in faith and character. Is this your son? Jay. He's on Fleming's basketball team. Oh, wonderful. Clint's doing amazing work with those boys. We partner with him on some weekend retreats, sports and spiritual development combined. Really powerful stuff. Rod matched his enthusiasm. That sounds perfect. How do we sign up? While Jay chatted with Carol Cross about basketball, Rod watched Edmund Black's body language. The way his eyes lingered on the teenage boys in the congregation, how he positioned himself to seem trustworthy to parents. Predatory behavior wrapped in scripture and community service. Actually, Rod said quietly, Coach Fleming mentioned you guys help with the intensive training program, the special mentorship. Black's expression shifted, becoming more guarded and knowing. You'd have to talk to Clint about that. Not everyone's ready for that level of commitment. I met some of the other dads yesterday. I'm ready. Black studied him carefully, then nodded. I'll talk to Clint. He'll reach out about next steps. Walking to the car afterward, Jay whispered, Dad, those guys are part of it, aren't they? Yeah. When? Soon. That evening, Rod received a text from Fleming. Black says you're interested in the full program. Big step. You sure you're ready? Rod responded, Jay's future is worth it. Whatever it takes. Fleming's response came with an address and time. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Come alone. Time to see what we really do. Rod stared at the message. This was the inner circle invitation, the point where they'd either fully trust him or test whether he was a threat. Everything hinged on the next 24 hours. He called Miles. It's happening tomorrow night. Fleming's bringing me into a session. Absolutely not. Rod, you can't. If I don't go, they'll know something's wrong. They'll scatter. All this work for nothing. Then we move tonight. Hit them now with what we have. And lose the chance to catch them in the act. To document exactly what they do to these kids. Rod's voice was steel. We get one shot at this. One chance to make sure no technicality, no legal loophole, no expensive lawyer gets them out. I need them on video, in the moment, undeniable. A long silence. Finally, what do you need from us? Everything. Full tactical support. Surveillance. Backup, the works. And Miles? Have the Bureau ready to move the second I give a signal. Rod, if this goes wrong. It won't. Monday was the longest day of Rod's life. He went through the motions of his contractor business, meeting with clients, ordering materials, reviewing blueprints, while his mind ran through every scenario of what might happen that night. At 3 p.m., Jay came home from school and practice. Rod sat him down at the kitchen table. Tonight's the night, Rod said. I'm going in. Jay's face went pale. To what? Where Fleming takes the boys. Yeah. Then I'm coming. Absolutely not. Dad, listen to me. Rod gripped his son's hands. What I'm about to do, you can't be part of. It's going to be dangerous, possibly illegal, and definitely something I don't want you anywhere near. Your job is to stay here with Aunt Lynette and be ready. Ready for what? For when it's your turn. Jay frowned, confused. Rod continued. When this is over, when we have them all exactly where we want them, you're going to be the one who gets justice. Not me, not the FBI, not the courts. You. But not tonight. I don't understand. You will. Trust me. At 7:30, Rod drove to the address Fleming had sent. A warehouse on the industrial edge of town, the kind of place with no neighbors to notice unusual activity. His truck was wired with every surveillance device Christian could fit. Cameras, microphones, GPS tracking, even a panic button that would alert the team instantly. Fleming was waiting outside with Herman Green. The video production owner had a camera bag over his shoulder. Rod, glad you made it. Fleming's smile was different now. Less coach, more businessman. Herman's going to document tonight's session. Standard practice. We keep records of everything for quality control. Makes sense, Rod said, his stomach turning. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a sophisticated production space. Professional lighting, multiple camera angles, a section area that looked disturbingly like a locker room set. And in the center, looking terrified, was Isaac Reynolds. The 16-year-old sophomore Jay had mentioned. Single mom, economic hardship, desperate for a basketball scholarship. Exactly the vulnerable profile Fleming targeted. Isaac, you remember what we talked about? Fleming said gently, his voice the perfect blend of authority and false compassion. This is standard documentation for college scouts. Every serious athlete does this. Your mom signed the consent forms. Isaac's eyes were wet, but he nodded. Rod recognized the manipulation. The boy had been groomed to believe this was normal, necessary, that resistance would cost him his future. Fleming turned to Rod. Why don't you watch how we run a professional development session? Then we'll talk about Jay's progression. Every instinct Rod had screamed to shut this down immediately. But he forced himself to stay in character, to be the complicit parent who valued opportunity over morality. He pulled out his phone as if to check messages, making sure the camera was recording. Herman Green began setting up equipment. Douglas Luna adjusted lighting. Casey Fitzpatrick reviewed paperwork on a clipboard. Those consent forms designed to provide legal cover. And Fleming started coaching Isaac through training exercises that had nothing to do with basketball. Rod watched for exactly 90 seconds, long enough to capture clear video evidence of what was happening, who was involved, and Isaac's visible distress. Then he touched his collar, activating the panic signal. Actually, Rod said, his voice cutting through the room, I think we're done here. Fleming froze. What? I said we're done. Rod moved between Isaac and the cameras, his demeanor shifting completely. Gone was the uncertain contractor. In his place stood someone who'd spent 19 years taking down predators. Isaac, go stand by the door. Don't move. The boy scrambled to obey, recognizing authority when he heard it. Herman Green moved toward Rod aggressively. Listen, you don't. Rod's hand shot out, grabbing Green's wrist and twisting it behind his back in one fluid motion. The camera bag crashed to the floor. FBI, you're under arrest. The warehouse door exploded inward. Miles led a tactical team of 8 agents, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Henson and Christian flanked them, moving to secure the space and preserve evidence. Fleming's face went white, then red. You can't. We have rights. This is entrapment. Really? Rod shoved Herman Green toward an agent and turned to Fleming. Because I'm not FBI anymore. Haven't been for 4 years. I'm just a dad who watched you hurt my son and decided to do something about it. Casey Fitzpatrick, the lawyer, was already screaming about warrants and illegal searches. Miles produced a document. Federal warrant issued 2 hours ago based on evidence provided by a confidential informant. We have authorization to search this location and seize all evidence related to child exploitation. Every camera, every file, every device in this building is now property of the United States government. Douglas Luna bolted for a back door. Christian clotheslined him effortlessly. Going somewhere, while agents secured the 8 men, Rod knelt next to Isaac. Hey, you're safe now. Your mom's on her way. What these men did to you, it's not your fault. It was never your fault, and it's over. The boy started crying. Rod stayed with him until Isaac's mother arrived, a woman named Sonia McDaniel, who collapsed when agents explained what had been happening to her son under the guise of athletic training. I didn't know, she kept saying. I signed the forms because Coach Fleming said it would help Isaac get scholarships. I didn't know. They made sure you wouldn't, Rod said gently. They targeted families where parents were too busy working to ask questions, too desperate for opportunities to see the manipulation. This is not on you. But he could see it would take her years to forgive herself. Just like it would take Isaac years to heal from what Fleming and his network had done. Outside the warehouse, agents loaded the 8 men into separate vehicles. Rod watched Fleming being read his Miranda rights, the coach's perfect mask finally cracking to show the monster underneath. Fleming's eyes found Rod's. You piece of shit. You lied to me. No, Rod said quietly, walking over. I gave you exactly what you thought you wanted, a complicit parent, someone you could control. You're the one who invited me in. You're the one who showed me your operation. You're the one who brought me to a crime in progress. My lawyers will. Your lawyer's in handcuffs next to you. The one who kept detailed records of every crime you committed because he was too paranoid to trust you. We have his files. We have your cloud storage. We have testimony from victims, financial records, communications logs, and video evidence of everything. You're done, Fleming. The coach's face twisted with rage. Your son's weak. He'll never amount to. Rod's fist connected with Fleming's jaw before he consciously decided to throw the punch. The coach went down hard. Agents moved to restrain Rod, but Miles waved them off. Suspect became aggressive. Miles said flatly. Agent Boyer defended himself. Everybody saw that, right? A chorus of agreement from the tactical team. Fleming spat blood, not arguing. Rod straightened his jacket. Take him away. The warehouse was now a crime scene. Agents methodically cataloging evidence. Miles pulled Rod aside. That was the stupidest, most reckless thing you've ever done. You could have been killed. You could have compromised the entire investigation. But I wasn't, and I didn't. You're lucky I didn't have to explain to your son why his father died playing hero. Rod met his old partner's eyes. How many victims did we save by getting evidence of an act of crime? How many defense attorneys just lost their, he said, she said argument. We didn't just catch them. We caught them in the act, on camera, with a witness. This case is airtight now. Miles couldn't argue with that. The Bureau's already coordinating raids across 4 states. Based on Fitzpatrick's files, we're hitting every address in the network simultaneously at dawn tomorrow. Estimated 40 arrests, potentially more as we flip cooperators. The kids. Victim Services is contacting families tonight. All 23 we identified. plus others we're still uncovering. It's going to be a long process, but they'll get support. Rod nodded, feeling the weight of the past 4 days settle onto his shoulders. I need to go home. Jay's waiting. Rod. Miles grabbed his arm. What you did, I get why you did it. But you can't keep doing this. You're not FBI anymore. You're a civilian who just went into an active investigation armed only with rage and a camera. It was my son. I know. And that's exactly why you can't do this. Next time, you might not walk away. Miles' expression softened. You got justice. Take the win and go back to your life. What there's no going back? What if I spent 19 years becoming someone who can't just build fences while monsters hurt kids? Then figure out who you want to be now. But do it legally. Rod drove home in darkness, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. He'd held it together through the operation, through the confrontation, through everything. But alone in his truck, the past 4 days hit him like a freight train. His son had been targeted by predators. He'd infiltrated their network. He'd watched them prepare to hurt another child. He'd orchestrated their takedown. And in 36 hours, he'd moved from ordinary contractor to the kind of man who could coldly manipulate monsters into their own destruction. The question was, who was he now? At home, Lynette met him at the door. Jay's in his room. He's been watching the news. They're reporting multiple arrests connected to an exploitation ring. He knows you did this. Rod found Jay sitting on his bed, laptop open to news coverage. The boy looked up when Rod entered. 23 kids, Jay said quietly. The news says at least 23 victims. I was almost just a number. Rod sat beside his son. But you're not. You're my son, and you're safe. Because of you. Because you didn't just call the cops and hope for the best. You went after them. I did what I had to do. Jay was quiet for a moment. Coach Fleming, when he had us locked in there, he said something. He said I should feel honored that boys from families like ours don't usually get opportunities like this. He made it sound like abuse was a privilege. His voice cracked. How messed up is that? Very. But that's how predators work. They convince victims that exploitation is actually opportunity. They twist reality until kids don't even know they're being hurt. The other guys, the 8 men you arrested with him, I recognize some of them from around town. Mr. Green filmed our championship game last year. I thought he was just a sports dad. Jay looked at his father. How do you know who to trust? It was the question Rod had been asking himself for 4 days. You trust yourself. You trust your instincts. And when something feels wrong, even if everyone's telling you it's normal, you speak up. I tried. I wanted to tell you about the weird stuff Coach was doing, but I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was being a baby. Jay. Rod gripped his son's shoulder. Listen to me. You did everything right. You survived. You called me when it mattered. And you're going to help make sure those bastards never hurt anyone again. What do you mean? Rod took a breath. This was the part he'd been planning since Saturday night. The FBI has enough evidence to convict everyone involved. But there's a difference between legal consequences and real justice. Fleming and his network destroyed lives. They need to understand exactly what that feels like. He pulled out a tablet, queuing up the warehouse video from earlier. This is footage from tonight. Fleming and his crew in the act, undeniable proof of what they do. The FBI has copies, but they also have rules about how evidence can be used. We don't. Jay's eyes widened. You want to release it? Not the parts showing Isaac or any other victims. Those stay sealed to protect them. But the parts showing Fleming, showing his crew, showing their operation, those go public. Every platform, every news outlet, every corner of the internet where their friends and family and communities will see exactly who they are. Won't that hurt the legal case? Miles says it won't. The evidence is solid either way. This is about something else. This is about making sure their lives are destroyed as thoroughly as they destroyed their victims' lives. Jay thought for a moment. What about the other 30 people in the network? The ones in other states? FBI's arresting them at dawn. But we have their information too. Names, photos, addresses, evidence. All of it going public at the same time. Dad, isn't that kind of extreme? Yes, Rod said simply. It's also exactly what they deserve. These people operated in darkness, hiding behind coaching credentials and community trust and legal technicalities. I'm taking away the darkness. I'm making sure everyone knows exactly what they are. Jay was quiet, processing. Finally, you said I'd get justice. How? Rod handed him a different camera, the same one he'd used in the warehouse. Tomorrow, after the FBI completes their raids, we're going to visit each of these men in custody. And you're going to film me telling them exactly what's about to happen to their lives. Then we're going to post it. The FBI will let us do that. The FBI doesn't need to know until it's done. By then, it'll be too late to stop. Jay held the camera, his hands steady despite everything he'd been through. This won't bring back what they took from me. From the others. No, but it'll make damn sure they never forget what it cost them. Dawn came with federal agents hitting 42 addresses simultaneously. Rod and Jay watched the news coverage from their living room. Footage of handcuffs, perp walks, shocked neighbors. The scope of Fleming's network was staggering. Coaches, teachers, youth ministers, even a pediatrician. All of them with access to vulnerable children. All of them now in federal custody. By 9 a.m., Miles called. It's done. We got 38 arrests. 4 fled, but we have warrants. Full cooperation from local law enforcement. Every device seized, every location secured. This is the biggest child exploitation bust in Bureau history. Good. Rod, the news is about to get very intense. Fleming's arrest is already trending. You and Jay need to be prepared for media attention. We can handle it. A pause. I know what you're thinking of doing. The public release. Don't. Why not? Because it's vigilante justice, and it sets a dangerous precedent. Let the system work. The system let Fleming operate for years. The system failed 23 kids that we know of, probably more. You want me to trust it now? I want you to not destroy your life and your son's by becoming the story instead of Fleming being the story. Rod understood the warning, but he also understood something Miles didn't. The system only worked when people feared it, when the cost of crime was undeniable. Fleming's network had operated without fear because they'd always believed they could hide, could lawyer up, could find technicalities. He needed to show them, and anyone else thinking of following their path, that some crimes meant total annihilation. At noon, Rod and Jay drove to the county detention center where Fleming and his 8 associates were being held pending arraignment. Miles had grudgingly arranged access as part of victim impact documentation, not knowing Rod's actual plan. They started with Herman Green, the video production owner, the man who'd filmed countless hours of abuse, who'd edited and distributed it for profit. He sat in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller without his camera bag. Rod gestured for Jay to start recording. Mr. Green, Rod said conversationally, my name's Rod Boyer. You spent Saturday afternoon with me at Coach Fleming's barbecue. My son Jay, he's holding the camera right now, was one of the boys you planned to film. Remember him? Green's face went pale. I want my lawyer. You can have your lawyer. This isn't interrogation. This is information. You see, in about 6 hours, your name, photo, and evidence of your crimes is going public. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every single person in your life is going to see exactly what you are. You can't do that. It's perfectly legal, actually. Public information, public interest. Your wife's name is Eileen, right? Your kids, Lana and Lauren, they're going to see it too. Along with every client who ever hired your production company, every professional contact, every friend. Your life as you knew it is over. Green started shaking. Please, I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. Just don't. You're going to cooperate anyway. The FBI has all your files. What I'm doing isn't about helping prosecution. It's about making sure you understand there's no hiding from this. There's no serving your time quietly and rebuilding. You're going to be known as a child predator for the rest of your life. They visited each one. Douglas Luna, who'd managed the digital infrastructure. Rod explained how every encrypted communication had been cracked, every deleted file recovered. Casey Fitzpatrick, the lawyer, Rod told him about his office files being seized, about his license to practice being revoked, about his name becoming synonymous with legal predator. The others, each one receiving the same message. Your life is over, and everyone's going to know why. Fleming was last. The coach looked haggard, his perfect veneer gone. He glared at Rod and Jay through the plexiglass. You think you're a hero, Fleming spat. You're just a thug with a badge. Don't have a badge anymore, Rod said calmly. I'm just a dad who watched you try to hurt his son and decided you needed to pay. The law will put you in prison for 20 years minimum. Federal guidelines for your charges, plus sentencing enhancements for scope and number of victims. But that's just the legal consequence. The real punishment? That starts today. Rod pulled out a tablet, showing Fleming a compilation. His confession from the warehouse, screenshots of his cloud storage files, financial records showing the money he'd made. This goes public in 3 hours, along with the names and evidence for all 42 arrests. Your network, your victims, everything. The world's going to see who you really are. Fleming's composure finally cracked. You're destroying lives. No, you destroyed lives. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. My family should have thought about them before you hurt kids for profit. How many parents did you manipulate? How many boys did you groom? Did you think about their families? Silence. Then Fleming's expression twisted with hate. Your son's weak. He'll never. Rod stood abruptly, the chair screeching. Jay's camera stayed steady, capturing Fleming's final words, his rage, his complete lack of remorse. Keep talking, Rod said quietly. Every word you say goes in the documentary. The world should see exactly how predators think. They left Fleming screaming threats about lawsuits and appeals. Guards moved to restrain him. In the parking lot, Jay lowered the camera. That was intense. Did you get what you needed? Jay nodded. Yeah, seeing them like that, powerless, scared. It helps. It doesn't fix what they did. No, but it makes it easier to move forward. They drove to the rented office where Henson and Christian were assembling the public release. Hours of editing had condensed warehouse footage, network documents, victim statements, identifying information redacted, financial records, and Rod's jail interviews into a devastating expose. This drops in 90 minutes, Henson said. I've got 30 news outlets ready to run simultaneous stories. Social media is primed. Every major platform. Miles is going to kill us, Christian observed. He'll get over it. Rod reviewed the final package. Everything was legally sourced, public records, evidence obtained with proper warrants, Rod's own recordings made with consent, however coerced that consent might have been. Nothing that would jeopardize the prosecution, but everything that would destroy the perpetrators' lives outside the courtroom. At 3 p.m., the story went live. Within minutes, it was trending. Within an hour, it was the top story on every news network. The scope of Fleming's network, the sophistication of their operation, the number of victims, all of it laid bare for the world to see. Rod's phone exploded with calls and messages. News requests, victims' families thanking him, former colleagues shocked by what he'd accomplished. He ignored all of them except one, Miles. You absolute maniac, Miles said when Rod answered. You just published enough information to potentially compromise jury pools in 4 states. Talked to 3 different attorneys before releasing. They all confirmed it was clean. That's not the point. The point is, Miles sighed. The point is you probably just ensured these bastards never walk free. Public pressure's already massive. Politicians calling for maximum sentences. Defense attorneys are scrambling. It's chaos. Good, Rod. I'm supposed to be furious with you. But you're not. A long pause. No, I'm not. What you did, it's not by the book. It might have been reckless. But you guaranteed that Fleming's network can never hide, can never minimize, can never pretend they're anything other than monsters. That matters. So we're good. Ask me after the trials. If this blows back legally, we're not good. But if it holds, Miles chuckled darkly. If it holds, you might have just revolutionized how we handle these cases. Prosecution in the courtroom and the court of public opinion simultaneously. Rod hung up and turned to Jay. You ready for the next part? What next part? The part where we help the other victims. All 23. Over the next week, Rod and Jay met with every family affected by Fleming's network. Some wanted privacy, wanted to heal quietly. Rod respected that, offering resources and support while maintaining their anonymity. But others wanted what Jay had wanted, to face their abusers, to reclaim power, to make sure the world knew what had been done to them and who was responsible. 13 families agreed to participate in a victim impact documentary. Rod brought in professional counselors and child psychologists to ensure everything was done ethically, that no child was re-traumatized for the sake of media exposure. What emerged was powerful. Teenagers speaking in their own words about manipulation, grooming, the long-term effects of exploitation. Parents explaining how predators had weaponized their economic struggles and family situations. Experts breaking down the systematic nature of Fleming's operation. And Rod, explaining how an ordinary father had become an investigator, an infiltrator, and ultimately an instrument of justice when the system moved too slowly. The documentary released 2 months after Fleming's arrest. It won awards, sparked legislative changes in how youth sports programs were monitored, and became mandatory viewing in FBI training for child exploitation cases. The trials were swift. Fleming pleaded guilty to avoid death penalty consideration in states where his crimes qualified. He received 6 consecutive life sentences plus 340 years. The 8 men with him got similar sentences. The broader network, attorneys, judges, clergy members who provided cover, fell like dominoes as deals were made and evidence mounted. Rod watched every sentencing, Jay beside him. They saw victims give impact statements, saw families confront the people who'd hurt them, saw justice delivered methodically and completely. But the real victory came 6 months after Fleming's arrest, when Jay returned to basketball. Not at Lakewood, but at a new school with a coach who'd been thoroughly vetted and who treated players like the kids they were. Rod attended every game. Sometimes he saw other parents from Fleming's network, the ones who'd been recruited but hadn't yet fully participated, who'd been given immunity in exchange for testimony. They avoided his gaze, ashamed of how close they'd come to crossing the line. Let them be ashamed, Rod thought. Let them remember. One evening after a particularly good game, Jay flopped onto the couch next to Rod. Coach Martinez wants me to do a basketball camp this summer. Help teach younger kids. Rod tensed. How would you feel about that? Nervous. But also, I know what to look for now. What red flags mean. Maybe I can help other kids avoid what happened to me. You don't have to fix the world, Jay. You're 17. I know. But you spent 19 years fighting monsters. I spent 1 week watching you take down a network of them. Maybe it's genetic. Rod laughed despite himself. God, I hope not. I want you to have a normal life. Did you have a normal life at 17? He thought about his own teenage years, about the father who'd abandoned him and the anger that had driven him to law enforcement in the first place. About 19 years of undercover work that had made him brilliant at deception and terrible at trust. No, Rod admitted, but that doesn't mean you can't. What if I don't want normal? What if I want to be someone who helps people? Then you do it your way, not mine. College, legitimate career, healthy boundaries. Be the person who prevents these situations, not the one who burns down the house after it's already on fire. Jay grinned. You burned down a pretty big house. Yeah, and it took 4 years off my life from stress. Learn from my mistakes. They sat in comfortable silence, watching highlights from the game. Rod's phone buzzed. Miles, sharing news that 2 more members of Fleming's extended network had been arrested in Oregon based on evidence they gathered. The machine Rod had built kept running even after he'd stepped away. Victims had resources now, support systems. Laws had changed. And most importantly, predators knew that the darkness they'd operated in was no longer safe. 3 years later, Rod stood in a college auditorium watching Jay graduate with a degree in psychology and a minor in criminal justice. His son had spent summers volunteering with victim advocacy groups, had testified before state legislatures about youth protection laws, had become exactly the kind of person who prevented tragedies instead of just responding to them. After the ceremony, Jay introduced Rod to his professors, his classmates, his girlfriend Rachel Haney, who'd survived her own exploitation and now worked in survivor support. Your dad's kind of a legend, one professor said. The Fleming case gets taught in my criminology class as an example of multi-jurisdictional cooperation. Rod smiled politely, not mentioning the parts that didn't make it into textbooks, the illegal entry, the manipulation, the public exposure campaign that had skirted ethical lines even as it achieved justice. Later, driving home, Jay asked, Do you regret how you handled it? The way you went after Fleming? Rod thought about the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the system had failed so badly that a father had to become an investigator. I regret every kid who was hurt before we stopped them. But do you regret your methods? No, because they worked. Fleming and his network are gone. 23 kids got justice. Hundreds of potential victims were saved. If I had to do it again, I make the same choices. Even the illegal ones. Especially those. Sometimes the law is too slow, too cautious, too bound by rules that predators exploit. Someone has to be willing to color outside the lines. Jay was quiet for a while. Then, I got into the FBI training program. They accepted my application. Rod's heart lurched. Jay, I know what you're going to say. That it's dangerous, that it'll consume my life, that I should choose something safer. But Dad, I watched you dismantle an entire criminal network in 4 days because you were willing to do what others wouldn't. That's who I want to be. Rod pulled over, turning to face his son. The FBI will teach you to follow rules. I taught you to break them when necessary. Those two things don't always work together. Maybe that's exactly what the Bureau needs. People who know when the rules matter and when justice matters more. Rod saw himself at 21, angry and idealistic, joining the FBI to fight the monsters who'd shaped his childhood. He saw 19 years of undercover work, of becoming people he despised to catch people he despised more. He saw the toll it took, failed relationships, constant deception, the inability to ever truly be himself. But he also saw the cases he'd closed, the victims he'd saved, the predators who'd gone to prison because he'd been willing to go further than anyone else. If you do this, Rod said carefully, you can't be me. You have to be better, smarter about boundaries, healthier about separation between work and life. Promise me that. I promise. But I also promise to remember what you taught me. That sometimes the only way to stop monsters is to be willing to go into the darkness with them. Rod pulled his son into a hug, this young man who'd survived trauma and become stronger for it, who'd chosen to face evil instead of hiding from it. Your mom will be proud, Rod said. Lynette had passed 2 years ago, cancer taking her before she could see Jay graduate. But she'd known about his plans, had supported them even as she worried. She'd tell me I'm crazy, Jay said. Then she'd help me pack. They drove home through familiar streets, past Lakewood High, where it had all started, past the warehouse where Rod had brought down Fleming's operation, past the church where predators had hidden behind scripture. All of it looked normal, peaceful, safe. But Rod knew better. Evil existed everywhere, hiding in plain sight, counting on people being too busy or too trusting to notice. He'd spent 19 years fighting it professionally and 4 days fighting it personally. Now his son was choosing to continue that fight. Rod couldn't decide if he was proud or terrified. Probably both. As they pulled into the driveway, Jay's phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. Isaac Reynolds is getting married. He wants us at the wedding. The boy from the warehouse, the one they'd saved that night 3 years ago. Rod had stayed in touch with Isaac and his mother, watched the kid graduate high school and start college, saw him rebuild his life piece by piece. We'll be there, Rod said. That night, Rod sat in his workshop surrounded by half-finished projects. Fences that needed painting, cabinets requiring installation, the normal work of a contractor's life. But his mind wasn't on carpentry. He thought about the 42 men in federal prison, about Fleming serving 6 life sentences, about a network that would never hurt another child. He thought about 23 victims who'd found justice and healing, about families that had been given resources and support, about laws that had been changed. And he thought about his son, about to enter the FBI and carry forward the work of fighting monsters. Rod's phone buzzed with a message from Miles. New case in Atlanta. Trafficking ring using youth soccer programs. Interested in consulting? He stared at the message. He'd told himself Fleming was a one-time thing, that he'd return to normal civilian life, that justice was someone else's job now. But that was a lie. It had always been a lie. Some people were builders who created things. Others were builders who destroyed things that needed destroying. Rod had spent 19 years being the latter, for years pretending to be the former, and 4 days remembering which one he actually was. He typed back, "Send me the details." Outside, night fell over the quiet suburban street. Lights glowed in windows where families sat down to dinner, where kids did homework, where normal life continued oblivious to the darkness that existed just beneath the surface. But Rod Boyer wasn't normal. Never had been, never would be. He was a father who'd gone to war for his son and discovered he was very, very good at it. And the war wasn't over. It would never be over. He opened his laptop and started reading Miles' case file, already planning how to infiltrate, how to gather evidence, how to bring down another network of predators who thought they were untouchable. In the next room, Jay was on the phone with Rachel, laughing about something from graduation. Young, hopeful, ready to change the world through legitimate channels. Rod would protect that hope. He'd do the dark work so his son could do the light work. He'd cross the lines that couldn't be uncrossed so Jay wouldn't have to. That was what fathers did. The case file detailed a sophisticated operation across 3 states. It would take months to infiltrate, weeks to gather evidence, tremendous risk with no guarantee of success. Rod smiled and started making notes. Some men built houses. Some men built covers. And some men built justice from the ruins of their own rage. Rod Boyer had found his calling again. And God help anyone who hurt children on his watch, because the law had limits. He didn't. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.